Hey guys, Ariel Siegelman here with the Draco Group. Today we're going to be doing a lesson on how to clean the AR-15 type rifle. We've gotten a lot of questions about that recently, and a lot of people have asked me what kind of cleaning kits they should buy, how they should go ahead and clean their rifles. People are talking about buying these like $100 kits. So I just want to kind of walk through the way that, like, how my kit is put together, and how to clean your rifle. This is a basic field cleaning type scenario, and for the most part, you don't need to clean your rifle any more than this. So a field cleaning is good enough. In fact, I've pretty much never cleaned my rifle more than this, and it works fine. So, okay, first thing, you want to have your rifle. You want to have your favorite propaganda paper to protect your table. Some oil. This is just like some light oil, probably 3-in-1 oil is just fine. This happens to be some gun cleaning oil, but you know, I would use anything that, even like motor oil, I think would be just fine too. If you want to go really extreme, you can also use some diesel fuel to rub down any dirty items first, then you rub it off, clean it, and then you put the oil on afterwards. So I'm not putting any diesel fuel on mine. I almost never do. I don't go that in depth usually. I also have an old toothbrush. I have a cotton rag. If you want to get really fancy, you can also have some Q-tips. And I have a metal nail. So as you can see, I don't purchase a $100 kit or even a $10 kit. Pretty much everything I've got here cost me like, I don't know, $2. So now I'm going to show you this also. If you were going to invest in any kind of tools, I would suggest at least having one of these. So this is a rifle rod that you can get at any like Army Navy store. Basically, you just put these pieces together, right? They all screw together like this, and it's good for pretty much any rifle. And I use this on my pistols actually. I'll show you how it works. You got this little piece that a piece of rag can go through, and you'll run this through the barrel. The reason I would suggest having one of these, first of all, you can see it's pretty long, so pretty much any rifle barrel, I don't think too many people have longer barrels than that. I hope not. I mean, that'd be kind of silly. But you can run this rod through the barrel. Now, if you ever had anything jammed in your barrel, you want a stiff rod like this to like punch it out. You guys can also find these sorts of things. This is a nice thing to have in your kit. I obviously have one. I use this less because this thing, like I said, is stiff, and so I can run it through the barrel, and again, if there was something stuck in there, I can push it out, whereas this thing doesn't allow me to do that. So I use this less. Okay, starting with cleaning. First thing I obviously want to do is I want to check my weapon. So cleaning your weapon is one of the most dangerous times. Statistically, it's when most people accidentally shoot themselves or other people because they're messing around with their weapon. They forget to clear it out, and so they don't realize that they've still got a magazine in the weapon, which this obviously does. So before I ever do anything with my weapon, I want to clear it first. So, reminding everybody how to clear your weapon. I'm going to choose a safe direction. That's number one. I'm going to go ahead down onto a knee. I'm going to remove my magazine. Step one, I'm going to stick my fingers inside where the magazine goes. I want to have redundant levels of safety. If you guys have taken any of my classes, you've heard that before, redundant levels of safety. I stick my fingers in, and I also look inside where the magazine was. Number two, I cock the weapon one time fast, so that if the weapon is working correctly and if there was anything inside, it would eject. However, I don't assume that the weapon's working correctly, therefore, Part B of step 2 is I pull the slide back, I look inside where the chamber is, so that if there was a bullet stuck in the chamber, I could see that. And then I look down inside the magazine well from here, so that I can see the ground through the magazine well. Then I know that there's nothing left inside. I release the bolt. Step 3 is I'm going to verify that the weapon is actually safe. Even if I made a mistake all the way through step 1 and 2, I want to verify, so I'm going to take the weapon off safety onto fire so that I can pull the trigger. I'm going to aim through my sight so that I know if for some reason I made a lot of mistakes up until now and the weapon were to fire, I know exactly where the bullet's going to hit and I won't destroy anything or hurt anyone else. That was my re-verification that the weapon is empty. Now, if I want to put it back on safety, of course, with an AR-15 rifle, I can't put it on safety if it's not cocked. So I'm gonna cock the weapon. Now I can put it on safe. I can close the dust cover because I'm a professional and that's the way I do it. Now, because I'm gonna treat myself when it has to do with safety, I treat myself as if I'm a kindergartner. It doesn't matter how much experience you have. So here I have a magazine that has bullets inside of it. I'm gonna go ahead and put the magazine far away from myself so I can't make any stupid mistakes. Okay, no ammunition in the area. I don't want to make any mistakes. Now, taking the weapon apart. Step 1, I'm going to take this pin out by pushing here with my thumb or my finger. I can push it, it goes in. I'm going to grab it here. I'm going to pull it out. Now I'm going to open the weapon like this. I'm going to take the charging handle and see how the bolt comes out with the charging handle. I pull the bolt all the way out. I put it on my surface that is covered in my newspaper so that I don't hurt my table. And I also take out the charging handle. Notice the charging handle fits into a groove here that it won't come all the way out straight. So what happens is I pull it out as far as it'll go, then I bring it down, and then I drop it on the floor. Now the charging handle comes out. Lay that on the table. Okay, now my weapon is taken apart as much as I need to take it apart. Lay my weapon on the table. I don't have to take it apart anymore. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take apart the bolt. The bolt is the part that I most need to clean. So, number 1, I've got this little pin right here. I need to take that out. If I can get my fingernail in it, that's great. I got it here. If I can't, what I do is I use the nail and I just sort of grab it and pop it out until I can grab it with my fingers. Okay, this is called your pin Shabbat, because if you lose this little pin, you'll probably spend all of your weekend looking for it. So what I do is I put the pin here on the gas tube so that I don't lose my pin Shabbat. Now you can hear that the firing pin dropped out. That's the firing pin. You can see how dirty it is. Now, I'm going to take the bolt itself. I'm going to push it in. Notice what happens when I push it in. This little pin here, I call this the television pin because it looks like a TV screen. I turned it sideways. See how this pin turns sideways so it'll come out past the gas tube. So I bring it out past the gas tube, lay that down on the table. I want to be really organized here because I don't want to lose these pieces. That would be bad. Then this piece of the bolt comes apart, and that's it. My whole bolt. Notice I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. That's it. I don't need to take my weapon apart more than that, usually. Put the pin here so I don't lose it. Okay. Cleaning the weapon. Step 1. I'm going to take my rag. I don't need the whole rag, so I mean I could rip a piece off. I don't know. I feel like not ripping a piece off right now. So I'm going to take the pin. I'm going to start with this. I'm just going to rub all these pieces down and get all the junk off of them. There's a lot of like old oil and carbon. You can see the black carbon from shooting the weapon. Just wipe it off with your rag. You don't even need any solution on there. If you really wanted to, you could put some oil on, but we're gonna put the oil on afterwards. So first we'll wipe it, we'll put oil on, we'll wipe it again, then we'll wipe it a third time to get the oil all off of it. The amount of oil that's left on at the end is enough. Once you've wiped it to get all the oil off, it's still enough oil to keep your weapon in good working order. Your firing pin should be silver. I mean, unless you have like some other color firing pin, but usually a standard firing pin in an AR-15 rifle is a silver colored pin, just like this. Notice that at the beginning it was all black, so you want to wipe off all that carbon, all that black soot from your firing pin. Now notice right here there's going to be residue that builds up, so that's like a hardened carbon, and this is where my nail comes in handy. So I'm going to take the nail. I've heard some people tell me that, oh, you can't don't want to scratch your bolt or any piece of your rifle with anything hard, and man, give me a break. This is a military weapon. This is something that is made to be used aggressively in the field. Take your little nail and scratch that stuff off of it. It'll be just fine. Your weapon can handle a lot. Thank God. When I'm wiping off the television pin, that little square thing, I just wipe, again, all the residue off that'll come off with the rag. Probably what you'll find is that this little groove in here may have some residual stuff stuck to it. You can see kind of in there's a little bit of carbon buildup. So if I need to, I take my my nail. Here it is. It's easy to misplace these little things on your work area. So I take my little nail, and again, I scratch a little bit around there just to get that junk to loosen up, and then I wipe it off with the rag again. Around that little groove, nice and clean. Okay, now we've got these two pieces left. We've cleaned everything else. Everything that we've cleaned so far has been pretty easy. These two pieces are the harder pieces to clean. First thing I'm gonna do, just like the other ones, is I'm gonna wipe everything off that comes off easily with my rag. So I wipe this down, I get all the residue off. What you're gonna find though is that there's so many little crevices and pieces on here that that can catch carbon that you need to spend a little bit more time on this piece in particular. So what I want to do is look between all these little teeth here, and you know, normally you don't have so much carbon buildup. You just want to make sure that you get your rag into the shape that can fit in between each one of those pieces, and kind of rub the rag in there like this, and get every one of those teeth. Now, you've got a spot in here that also carbon can build up all the way around here. So I take my nail and just rub it around the rim like this, all good. I take my rag, I stick it in there, and then I'm gonna take my nail with the rag on the end of it, and I'm just gonna rub all the way around like that. And that's it, I get that cleaned off. Good enough. Now the other side of this is also gonna have some carbon buildup if you've been shooting this thing a bit. So this part right here will have a good amount of carbon buildup usually. And this is exactly the thing that can cause your weapon to start to jam if it gets very dirty. What ends up happening, the reason this can cause it to jam, is because this piece fits inside of this piece, and everything needs to fit properly, everything needs to fit tightly so that you get a good seal. Now if you get a lot of carbon buildup here, it'll start to not seal. It starts sitting out from where it needs to be sitting. So as the seal starts to break, you'll start to get problems in your shooting. That can happen after many hundreds of rounds, maybe even a couple thousand. But you know, every time you clean your weapon, there's no reason not to go through with your nail and just, look at that, scratch off. Look at all this carbon coming off. So you'll see it on my fingers. See that? That kind of stuff right there. It's dried up, sticky carbon. It's not actually sticky on my fingers, but it like sticks to the metal. It comes off sort of like a dust actually. And I go ahead and scratch it with the nail all the way around and try to just get all of that to come off. Now you can see that I've cleaned this surface off. That's pretty well. I mean, you know, if you really want to be scrutinizing this, you might find a little flake of carbon on there, but guess what? I don't care, and neither does your rifle. Okay, if you want to go real extreme, you want to go real advanced clean job on this thing, again, from a field cleaning perspective, I'm not talking here about gunsmith, you know, you guys want to critique my gunsmith level. You don't need to be a gunsmith to clean your rifle. Here's the advanced level of cleaning your rifle for the field. See this pin here? I'm gonna push down on this little thing because there's a spring inside there, so I hold it down with my thumb. I stick even by holding it down, it already came loose, but I can stick my nail in there to punch it loose. See that little pin comes out, I grab a hold of it. Now, don't lose this pin either. Don't lose anything. All right, I take the pin out, now this thing comes out. Look at that. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, now I'm just gonna take my little rag. I'm gonna wipe anything out of there that's sitting in there. If I wanna get into the little cracks and crevices, just like I did before, I'm gonna take my nail, put the rag on the end of the nail, and I run it all around the edges, polish it up, bingo. Then I take this piece, same exact thing. Run the rag in there. Now be careful that this little spring doesn't pop off and get lost. If it does pop off, just put it back on. No big deal. Boom. That's as clean as I need to get it. Looks good. Dry it off. You don't want it to be wet in there. See that there's a little bit of wet inside of there, so I'll try to take my rag and kind of push it into that little hole on both sides. No big deal. Dry it out, clean it out. Easy. Okay, now obviously I'm just gonna put this thing back together. I don't wanna keep these little tiny pieces apart any longer than I have to. So I'm gonna put this section back on. I'm gonna take this little pin. As I push pressure with my thumb here, I shove this back into the hole. Make sure it goes all the way in, seats properly. Should be equal distance on this side and on this side. Good to go. Okay, put this with my clean pieces. Notice I took my pin shabat. Now I can put it on the end of this because I'm gonna clean this part now. Okay, the full bolt itself. Again, same idea. I'm just gonna wipe it off. Get all the oil and carbon to come off of it. Anywhere there's a crevice, I'm gonna take my rag, fold it in half, get it to run up and down those rails. I look inside of all of these. I'm gonna run the rag parallel to each one of those cracks because I'm getting real serious here. So, you know, I'm gonna take my nail, put it in each one of those cracks and just rub them out. We've wiped off the whole bolt carrier. We've run the rag through all these little cracks and crevices here. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the rag underneath the little gas tube here. I'm just gonna rub like this, so I rub up, then I rub down. And notice there's like a little kind of ridge right there. So I'm gonna use, again, that nail technique with my rag just to wipe every one of these ridges. Wipe it in there. Every one of these little holes, I just kind of stick it in like this. Wipe it out. this little hole here, wipe it out. Notice there's a ridge right there. Good one for my nail. There's a little bit of carbon that builds up there sometimes. You can see it here. Wipe that off. Next ridge right here. All these ridges, I'm just gonna give it a good wipe down. All these holes, I'm gonna rotate my little rag inside of. Loosen everything up, wipe it off, good to go. Now this gas tube can also get some stuff in it, so I'm gonna roll my little rag up, stick it in there, rotate it around, just clean that out. Nice. Now what I'm gonna do is this hole itself, I'm gonna stick my rag into it. You can see here I got a little tail. I'm gonna pull it up like this. And I'm just gonna rub the rag in there like that. Kind of dry it out, rub it out. Take my nail, I'm pushing it up into this piece here. I'm gonna make sure that this whole face right there is all cleaned out. Got the rag in there. Clean that out. Now if I really feel like there's a lot of carbon buildup, I'll take my nail, I'll rub out those little cracks here. I'll rub the nail into the back of the bolt right there, into that crack, that hole. This way and then this way. Kind of loosen anything up that might be stuck in there, any of that carbon that got stuck. Look at that. Oh yeah, that's nice. Rub it off. I'll stick my rag back in there now, so anything that got loose comes out on the rag. The last part that I want to clean on this is one of the most important parts actually, is inside of this hole where the bolt itself sits. This piece sits inside of there. We talked already about how that face has to interface with another piece that's inside of there and seal. So both of those pieces you want to make sure are relatively clean. Well, more than relatively clean. So first thing I'm gonna do is just go ahead and stick my nail down in there. I hit the, there's a little ledge down in there as I go in on the side, and it's kind of a ring that goes all the way around. So I'm just gonna go ahead and like assume that there's carbon buildup in there. There almost always is, if you've shot it at all. So I'm gonna run around that little ring. Notice I turn the bolt like this so that I can get the nail to scratch off all the carbon on that ring. Now this is a point that it might come in handy to actually have a screwdriver, like a flathead screwdriver, or just some sort of a rod that's a little bit longer. I'm just holding this, but I could use my nail, but I just find that this will probably be easier. I'm gonna stick the rag on the end of that. I'm gonna stick that into this hole here. Make sure it goes all the way down to that little ledge. And I'm gonna rotate the rag inside there to take up any bit of carbon that I already loosened up with my nail or my flathead screwdriver, whatever I feel like using to scratch the inside of the bolt. Keep in mind the inside of your bolt is, the whole weapon is very strong. It's very hardened steel. Your little piece of rod is not gonna damage it. Now this is a point that we talked about, how if you want to be real serious, you could use a Q-tip. So this is a good spot to use a Q-tip. You can stick your Q-tip down in here and kind of get it as deep as possible. Rub it around like this, all the way up. Oh yeah, look at that, nice. I can rub it here, rub it in there, and just kind of rub out any spots that I think maybe I didn't quite get everything with my rag. But guess what, guys? If there's a little bit of residue that, you know, I could probably take another Q-tip and it would look dirty also when I rub it through here, but it doesn't matter. Your rifle's fine. All you want to make sure of is that you get the carbon buildup to flake off, and then you're going to re-oil it. It'll be good to go. You don't have to get all like clean your weapon until it's a mirror shine for like 4 hours. In all, I spend about 15 or 20 minutes on this, and I've never had very many problems. Now we've got the charging handle. This will also get a little bit dirty, so again, this is pretty easy. I'm just gonna wipe it down. You can see I got some residue on there, no problem. Wipe it off. I wanna make sure that just like all the other pieces, that I've got this little trench in here. I fold the rag up, run it up and down the trench, get any stuff that's stuck in there out. I roll it up into the little hole here. You can see that little hole. That'll get some funk in it. Rotate that around there. All good. Now we've finished cleaning the whole guts of the rifle, all the mechanism here, the bolt and the different pieces. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take the body of the rifle itself, and I'm just going to wipe out the inside where the whole mechanism sits. Now that the mechanism's out, so this is the trigger, well, this is the hammer, sorry, the trigger makes fall. So I'm wiping down the hammer, wiping down all the pins inside, all the places where the metal slides against metal. I'm gonna take this, put it onto fire. I don't like to, when there's no bolt inside, I don't like to just let the hammer fall, so I'm gonna do that with my finger so it doesn't fall hard. Wipe it all around, get anything out of it that might be dirty inside. You can see I'm wiping the inside of the magazine well. Nothing fancy, just wiping it down, outside, inside, all the places where the metal slides against metal I want to wipe out. Now, one of the other important parts of the weapon to clean is the chamber itself. So just like the bolt has certain pieces that interface and that want to lock together and seal, the bolt has to seal inside of the chamber. And so this little piece sits inside of, you can see the teeth in, well, these are the teeth, but these are the, I don't know, the other teeth where it sits. So inside of there, I want to also clean out. If I stick my finger in here, you can see, let's see. I'll probably stick my finger in, it'll probably be all dirty. Yeah, look at that. That kind of stuff I want to clean out. So again, I'm going to take my rag, I'm going to stick it down in here. I'm going to take my nail or my little rod, and I'm just going to punch it in there, clean it out, take my nail and sort of scratch around the edge anywhere where there might be residual carbon. Just loosen it up, and then I'll take the rag back in and wipe it out again. Now there's another area here that sometimes picks up a little bit of dirt and grime. So I like to, here's a little trick that you can see the magazine release button. So I'm gonna stick my finger here. Notice what happens when I push on it, this little ledge comes out. So I'm just gonna push and hold, and I'm gonna rub that ledge off all the way around so that I make sure that there's no dirt or grime that has collected on there. So pretty simple. Just wanna make sure anywhere that any nastiness can collect, I'm just cleaning it off. Now remember, there's this hole is where the bolt carrier group fits in, and above that there's this little rail that the charging handle slides in and out of. And so that rail, that whole spot in there, there's a lot of gas that gets blown back through there when you fire your weapon. And so that's an area also that can have some carbon buildup, especially if you look into this area here, you'll see that little gas tube. And so from that gas tube all the way back, there could be some carbon buildup. I'm gonna take my rag and stick it up into that area, rub it all the way up and down through there just to clean that out. And if I wanna get real fancy, I can take my nail and my rag, and I can just go between that gas tube carefully. I don't wanna be too aggressive and like bend the gas tube or something, but you don't have to You don't have to pretend that it's like a cotton ball or anything. I mean, you're not going to hurt that rifle unless you really push on the gas tube hard. But again, I just am aware that the gas tube is something that is maybe a bit more fragile than some other parts of the rifle. So that's it. I just wiped it out. Looks pretty good to me. Good enough. It'll fire just fine. Another 10,000 rounds. This weapon is now pretty dry. It's pretty clean. I'm not going to clean it any more than that. But what I am going to do is I'm going to now start oiling it. Since I've just dried everything off, now I'm going to take some of my oil. I'm going to take my rag. I'm going to put a very carefully measured amount of oil onto my rag. And I'm just going to take these pieces and I'm going to start oiling each one like this. Make sure it's got a nice little coat of oil on it. I don't want these pieces to be drenched in oil. I just want them to have like a thin layer of oil all the way around them, inside and out, just the same way that I cleaned it. I'm gonna go back through and rub it down with oil, make sure it's got a nice thin layer on all parts. So I've just about finished all these internal pieces, wiping them down. I just want to show this piece real quick. This is, first of all, this is about basically how thoroughly I want to wipe my stuff down with the oil. I go like this all around the outside. I go like this on the inside. Good, good. You can see there's a thin layer of oil on it. Still, I'm going to take the more dry part of the rag now. I'm going to wipe it down another time just to take off whatever oil I can take off, and whatever's left on there is enough. Now, the reason I want to show this piece is because over here I've got this little pin, this little clip that sometimes can have a tendency to rust if I don't oil it properly. So I want to make sure that I really pull this out and I get that little pin in there, that whole little clip gets oil on it as well. That'll keep that thing from rusting. This whole little handle on the outside, I want to make sure that I oil too. Now I'm wiping out the whole body of the weapon. So I just wiped out I just oiled up the inside of the internal guts of the weapon. Now I'm wiping out the body of the weapon. Like I said, I'm gonna make sure I get the hammer itself. I'm gonna go ahead and release it like that, get all sides of it oiled up, and then I dry it off with the dry part of the rag. Good to go. Inside of here, just kind of wipe that down a little bit, all in here. Run my little oily rag. Notice I put, 5 or 6 drops of oil on this rag all together, and that's enough oil for the whole gun pretty much. Maybe I'll put another 2 drops on eventually, but all of that just kind of oiled up. Now, here are some important little points that I want to make sure I oil extra, because again, these are points that can rust over time. So this pin here, I'm going to make sure it gets nice and oiled. The face of it all the way around, that's a steel piece that'll have a tendency to rust. The dust cover and the pins around the dust cover, that can have a tendency to rust. I want to make sure I get that nice and oiled. Again, that thin layer of oil, I don't need like a bunch of oil on it. This pin here, same kind of a thing. Both sides of that. This little pin here, that will also have a tendency to rust. So taking my oily rag, make sure that has a nice coat of oil all the way around it. Don't want it to rust. This little ring here, this will have a tendency to rust. Go ahead and rub some oil on it. All these little metal parts. There's a lot of plastic on this gun, but these little external metal pins and rings, this little thing here, that can have a tendency to rust. Go ahead and get it. This little piece, get it. This little piece here, get a little layer of oil on it. It'll be happy. And then the last piece that I oil up is the barrel around here and the flash suppressor. A lot of times that can get a little bit of rust on it if you're not careful. Get in all those little grooves. Nice little, a little layer of oil will make the metal parts of your gun very happy. your rifle will like you for it. For those of you who have metal iron sights, you'll want to oil those as well. Those can rust. So you can see I'm getting in there, just kind of rubbing off my iron sights, raising them up here. I'm gonna rub them down with oil as well, especially the little, the sight post itself can get some rust on it if you're not careful. Notice too that I'm rubbing all the little screws, all my attachment points, like these screws here, those could rust. These little folding points here on my optic could eventually get some rust on them if I'm not careful. And this little ring here that is the attachment point for my sling, this thing can also get some rust on it. So I'm gonna carefully rub that down with a little layer of oil. Just wanna make sure I'm paying attention to details, and I'm not going crazy here, but I am making sure that I got a nice little layer of oil on all the metal parts of my weapon so I can put it away until I need it next. And I know that when I take it out, it's gonna work. Now we're ready to put the weapon together. Everything has been cleaned, it's been oiled, and it's been wiped off so that I just have a very thin layer of oil on everything. First things first, I take my bolt and I put it into the bolt carrier. Notice that I've got this little circle right there. So that circle, if the gas tube is the 12 o'clock point, so that circle is gonna be at 5 o'clock. That way I know things are lined up right, okay? So I can push this in, but I wanna turn it to about 5 o'clock, and that way I can see that the hole down in there is in the right position, because my next piece has to go in. That's my television pin. I know these are very scientific terms I've got here, but my television pin goes in, I turn it sideways like this, and that lines all the holes up so that when I hold my hand around these 2 points, I can take my firing pin and drop it right into position. See how that fits nicely in there? I put my finger down like this, I push it down so I make sure that it's seated properly in place. I take my Shabbat pin, put it into the hole here, just shove it in with my finger, it's seated properly. Now to check that everything is lined up well, I go like this. I hit it, I see that the firing pin doesn't come out, I go this way. I hear that, see how this thing comes out like this, but it doesn't pop out the end? I want it to be able to move back and forth just with a flick of my wrist. Okay, I'm gonna take my charging handle, put my charging handle into place. Goes in, notice it goes into the hole, and then I feel where it wants to go up into the groove. Now it's in its groove. I take this part, I put it, notice this guys, if this is in, if this is pushed in, you will not be able to get your bolt into the weapon. Why? Because this pin is in the way, it's gonna hit the edge of the weapon here. So before I put it in, I go like that, I flick my wrist, this thing comes all the way out, I line this up, slides in nicely, boom, boom, seated, close, make sure this pin is out all the way, sometimes it gets pushed in, close my weapon like this, close it like that, now my weapon's put together. I want to check it though and make sure I put it back together properly. So I do a functions check. First, I cock the weapon, feel the safety, good. Put it on fire. I'm going to aim, so I know that, I mean, obviously I don't have anything in it, but still, I don't like to ever pull the trigger if I'm not aiming. If there was a bullet, I would know exactly where the bullet hits. So I pull the trigger, boom. Notice that I keep the trigger depressed with my finger. My finger is still squeezing the trigger. I'm gonna cock the weapon again. You hear the trigger reset. That's the sound you want. Now I know I put my weapon back together properly. Cock the weapon, put it on safe, close the dust cover, finished. Thanks for watching our video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Anybody who has any questions or any comments that you want to make, please feel free. We want to talk to you about anything that you want to talk about. So just to recap, you don't need fancy equipment to clean your weapon. You can make do with like an old pair of cotton underwear, some motor oil, a couple of Q-tips, and a nail. So keep it simple. This works for me. It's worked for many soldiers. You can do this level of cleaning, you're good to go. If you feel like your weapon's still not working after what we just did, then maybe you have a problem with the weapon. Take it to a gunsmith, let him check it out. Hope you enjoyed our video. That's what we got for you today.